I broke 55 soft shackles just to tell you which is best for sailing. In this, the way I make soft shackles, I've learned, is probably not the best. I'm going to change my methodology as a result of what I found. So we've got 7 different soft shackles to test, plus variations like tightening the knot versus not tightening it. Let's talk a little bit about terminology so you're clued up before we get into this video. You've got the head, that can be a knot or it could be a dog bone. You have the neck, which is just below the head. You then have the actual shackle strands itself, and then you have the noose on this side, and the noose is what opens up and closes, encapsulates the head and forms the shackle link. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4 strands now taking the load. So you could believe that these should be 4 times as strong as a single strand. But you'd be wrong, because tying knots in rope and having tight bend radiuses severely weakens it. So the reality is you lose about 50% strength from doing that. So you kind of times it by 4 and divide it by 2 to get the very best soft shackles are around 200% of the minimum breaking load of a single strand. I wanted to find out a little bit from a sailing perspective, because there's several ways of making these things, which is best for sailing, which is strongest, but what other considerations are there to what makes a good soft shackle? And in this, the way I make soft shackles, I've learned, is probably not the best. I'm going to change my methodology as a result of what I found. Today is D-Day, Destruction Day. I'm going to Marlow to tear apart all these lovely soft shackles.
Okay, let's see where we get to. Nowhere near. 395 kilos.
Don't risk it, ladies and gentlemen.
There's 55 broken soft shackles there. Been at Marlow all day pulling these things apart. Pretty interesting results. Let's start by talking about 2 options which I didn't have a lot of hope for being the strongest, but I was curious to see if they would be strong enough. So coming bottom of the test was a simple overhand knot with the 2 tails. Now these broke with an average break load just under 400 kilos, so less than half of the minimum break load of this 3mm Dyneema. Yeah, I think there would be quite a few applications on a dinghy where you are getting shock loads which are over 400 kilos. I wouldn't be comfortable sailing with that. The other option for super easy to make is this tie bone. Now, normally you splice these in, but I wanted to see how they would last with just little double overhand stoppers on them. And they did okay. So an average breaking load of just under 800 kilos. The lowest one broke at 650 kilos. Would I go for these? I think these tie bones are really good, and some clever ways you can use them for halyards where they're spliced in. I'd stick to that rather than these overhands. 650 kilos. Yeah, I think for me, anything that's below the breaking strain, minimum breaking strain of the line itself is a bit of a concern, because you are giving away a bit of a safety factor there. Right, let's talk about the diamond knot next. This is the knot that I use most often because it is very easy to tune the length of it. And in theory, I think I should be getting about 150% of line strength. So anywhere I've got a single piece of Dyneema halyard with one of these soft shackles on the end, these soft shackles just aren't going to be the weak link. However, I learnt something very important about what I've been doing with my soft shackles. So you'll see from this one here, I've cut the heads off very close to the knot. and I thought this would probably be okay because I always pre-tension my shackle, so I thought there's not going to be much slippage in there, but it turns out the pre-tensioning I can do in my garage is not sufficient, and you do need to leave a tail, because my diamond knots with the tails cut off broke at an average brake load of just over 1,000 kilos. So that average is higher than the minimum brake load of the line itself. However, by leaving just a 5mm tail on, that brake load goes up from 1,056 to 1,440 kilos. Another 400 kilos just by leaving a bit of a tail. And what I was really surprised about, we tested not pre-tensioning this knot and just leaving a short bit of tail, and with no pre-tension the average brake load was 1,418 kilos. So actually the most important thing isn't pre-tensioning the lot but leaving a bit of a tail on. So that is something I've learned. Now I will still pre-tension my knots, because in sailing it's very important to hit a specific length if you want to get your halyard up to the top of the mast. So I don't want it to stretch out under you, so I will pre-tension, but I will now start leave a little bit of a tail just to get those extra 400 kilos of brake load. Another variation on the diamond knot that I don't typically use is this, and it's with a buried tail. Now, I don't use these because I had a theory that burying the tail prevents an even distribution of load, and also I find over time it gets harder to open up this noose as the rope wears, and it just gets a bit fiddly to open and close. So I don't personally like these, but I was interested to see if my theory about the load sharing was right, and it was. So the diamond knots with a buried leg broke about 150 kilos on average lower than the kind of more traditional two-stranded one, and they often broke at, you can see here, at the base of the knot, where I think basically one strand was loaded more than the other. Still way over the minimum brake load for the line itself, so you're getting a decent return there for your soft shackle, but I still think not optimum. Now, I've never had a soft shackle break under load alone. They've always broke through wear, so I was keen to see what would be the advantage of a wear cover. I made 5 of each type, 5 diamond knot soft shackles, and 5 of them with the jackets on, 5 of them bare, subjected them to being rubbed up and down a file with a 10 kilo weight on, and all of them with a wear cover broke either at the knot or the noose, and never where they had been worn, whereas all the soft shackles which had been subjected to the wear without the wear cover broke at the point they'd been worn. Now, ultimately, if you put a soft shackle anywhere where it's got chafe on it, especially in a sandy or salty environment, eventually it is going to wear through and compromise the strength of the rope there. But it just goes to show how much abuse these chafe covers can take and how much extra longevity it can give your soft shackle. And given that is the major route to soft shackles breaking on a boat, I think a chafe cover is an excellent addition. Right, let's get on to the big dogs now, the ones which were strongest. These soft shackles break around the neck, typically in the noose, like this one. And that's because of the bend radius as it goes around the neck of the knot. The other way they break is by the knot collapsing. In theory, the strongest soft shackles should be the ones where you've got 4 strands going through the neck to bulk out that neck. And adding on to that a knot which is impossible to collapse, it's no surprise that the winner of the test in terms of highest average brake load was this overhand eye splice with buried tails. The button knot actually didn't do that well. This in theory should be just as good. However, it got the highest brake load on test at over 2,000 kilos, but was let down severely by my knot tying skills, and 3 of the 5 collapsed in the knot like this. The other 2 were 1,800 kilos and 2,000. So I think there's potential for these to be really good, but there's a reason why I don't make them very often. Add on to that I just think there's nowhere on my boat which I really need this extra few hundred kilos of brake strength. I'd rather have something that is dependable, easy to make, can be made really small, because fundamentally if you were replacing an actual metal shackle, the advantage a metal shackle has is they can be really small in their length, whereas these are typically harder to make small in length, and that's something that differs with like slacklining or 4x4s. The additional difference is, on a dinghy, a lot of the applications where you're using a soft shackle, it's performance orientated rather than safety orientated. And I'm not saying you shouldn't be safe on the water, but if the soft shackle breaks on your main halyard on your dinghy or on your kite halyard or your kicker, it's annoying, you've lost a race, but your life's not a danger, it's just an early return to the beach. Now, the dog bones, a lot of people, they were the most popular pick to be the strongest, but I was using Alan's smallest dog bone on 3 of the ones I tested, and they broke at 1,400 kilos, and it was actually the dog bones themselves which snapped. Now, these tiny dog bones only have a minimum brake strength of 350 kilos. So to be braking at over 1,400 is impressive. You've got to take into account that they're only on one side of the soft shackle, so only taking half the load. So, but still, for something that's only rated to like 650 kilos in this application, was then braking at 1,400 was impressive. And the one I tested with the larger diameter pin broke at almost 1,700 kilos, still way above its minimum brake strength. So they were impressive. Now, the downside to these, why I don't use them widely, again, is you need a full length berry on the Dyneema, which means I tend not to use them on a soft shackle because it makes the soft shackles longer. I think there are some really good ways you can utilize the dog bones for sail fastenings, very quick to undo, and they give a nice secure attachment for anything that's flogging, but yeah, not something I use a huge amount in soft shackles. So am I going to change the type of soft shackle I use? No, but I have learned a really valuable lesson about cutting off the ears of my soft shackle too short, so I'm definitely going to be leaving a little bit of extra on there. And I may, if the circumstances arise where I need a really strong soft shackle, think about using this overhand knot with the eye spices. But for me, the extra brake load you get from them just isn't worth the bulkiness of the knot. So I probably won't be converting to using them in future. I do think there are really good options for using these different types of soft shackles, so I've got tutorials on how to make each of them if any take your fancy. Some of the decision might just be down to aesthetics, because to be honest, frankly, a lot of them are plenty good enough for the applications on a dinghy. Comment down below if you've got a favourite type of soft shackle and why you prefer that method. Hopefully you found this video interesting and informative, and a big thank to Marlo who provided the D12 3mm Dyneema for this testing.